Mhm. Namaste, everyone. Welcome to today's guest talk. The title today is Ramayana as Sri Aurobindo saw it. Our speaker today is Dr. Ramesh Bijlani, who is a prolific writer and an inspirational speaker. He loves to use the gift of communication that he has received from the divine for dispensing small doses of love and wisdom from the inexhaustible pharmacy of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. Once a professor at AIMS New Delhi, Dr. Bijlani is now a spiritual seeker at Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Delhi branch. Dr. Bijlani, thank you so much for being with us today as a speaker. We eagerly look forward to your session, sir. Over to you.
Thank you, Ranima. And good morning here, good evening there to all of you. And all the best wishes for Vijayadashmi, the auspicious day of Vijayadashmi today. The topic is Ramayana, and you can see the significance of this topic, particularly today. Sri Aurobindo has talked about Ramayana at many places, but particularly in the Foundations of Indian Culture, the volume which now has been published as The Renaissance in India and other essays on Indian culture, as one of the volumes in the complete works of Sri Aurobindo series. Of course, available as an independent book also under that title, The Renaissance in India and the Foundations of Renaissance in India and the other essays on Indian culture. And what he says about Ramayana occurs in one of the chapters on Indian literature. And as Sri Aurobindo does everywhere else, he gives a unique orientation to every subject. And the background that he has established before he talks about the Ramayana and the Mahabharata is that the Vedas provided the seed for the religious and spiritual culture of India. And then the Upanishads spoke about the highest truth in very clear language. And following that, there was a ferment of intellectual activity. And this is understandable because this tradition or this religious tradition, which had the foundation in the Vedas and the Upanishads, was a tradition that allowed for a lot of freedom, intellectual freedom. You could question even the highest truths in the Upanishads and say that, well, I don't believe in them. I want to verify for myself. So you could go on an independent spiritual quest and discover the answers for yourself. And as you can expect, only a few will do it at any point in history, at any place in the world. And that's what happened here also. But then the freedom was available to go on that quest. And that's how we have more than 100 Upanishads. Because not only the freedom was there to go on an independent spiritual quest, but also if you wanted to put down your experiences in words, you could do it. And that's how the Upanishads were created. And we ended up having more than 100 Upanishads. But then some people also realized that for this to really properly enter the lives of people and lead to a well-organized society, we need some more works which are more down to earth. And that's how we got the Dharma Shastras and the Artha Shastra and so on. So these tried to give in serious language, but same time in more practical terms, how the religious and spiritual traditions built up by the Vedas and the Upanishads could help in constructing a well-organized society and guide a person towards following the usual life cycle, that is being a student and then a householder and then gradually getting detached from it and so on. But how all that could, the normal life cycle could fit into a way that the person is a successful and devoted householder. And at the same time, the person is working throughout life for the ultimate goal of life, which is moksha, that is liberation from the bondage which goes with worldly life. Not that one has to run away from worldly life, but as Aditi, who is here, she says that you can engage with worldly life without getting entangled. So that was sort of the aim throughout when this literature, the Dharma Shastras and the Artha Shastras, they developed. But then probably some people also realized that it should be available in the form of stories. And that's how the history and legend, which had been passed on from generation to generation for a long time and seemed to be quite well known, was uh, composed in the form of these two epics, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. So the Mahabharata and the Ramayana may be only about 3,000 years old, that is after the Vedas and the Upanishads, but the history and the legends around them had been around much longer. How much longer? We'll not get into that debate because, you know, then you'll have to go about when was Dwapara Yuga and when was Treta Yuga and so on. And we'll not get into that. But it was history, legend, and the creativity of those who created these epics put together, which gave us these beautiful pieces of literature. And because there was an element of history in it, they came to be known as Itihasa. So the Ramayana and the Mahabharata are the Itihasa. And when those who created these works were working on them, their aim was not just to create beautiful pieces of literature, which of course they did very successfully, but also they always had the intention in mind. The intention was to be the architects, the builders of a society in which people will have available through these stories all the guidance that they will possibly need for living a good ethical life and working towards a harmonious human existence without in any way compromising with material progress. So all this was kept in mind while writing this. So you can see that both the intention and the creativity, they joined hands to create these beautiful pieces of literature. And those who created them have been eminently successful because, as we can see, that today these two epics shape our thought much more effectively than the Vedas or the Upanishads or the Dharma Shastras and Artha Shastras. Uh, and this influence is there because of the system of education we had. And in fact, that was the intention of those who created them. They created as a part of Vedic education because even a child can understand these stories. And in fact, Ramayana and Mahabharata were taught in Indian schools till about 150 years ago when the British changed the system of education and the Pathshalas were not supported, and the result was they gradually shut down and gave way to the present system of education. So it's because the Ramayana and Mahabharata were being taught in Indian schools in Pathshalas till about 150 years ago that we find that the influence has continued. There's a remarkable continuity from when these epics were created about 3,000 years ago till now. And you find that they continue to shape the way we think and behave in the world. So with this background, let me now turn to the passage which I have chosen for today. So this passage is from this volume, The Renaissance in India and Other Essays on Indian Culture. And Sri Aurobindo says, the Ramayana embodied for the Indian imagination its highest and tenderest human ideals of character, made strength and courage and gentleness and purity and fidelity and self sacrifice familiar to it in the suavest and most harmonious forms, colored so as to attract the emotion and the aesthetic sense, stripped morals of all repellent austerity on one side or on the other of mere commonness, and lent a certain high divineness to the ordinary things of life. Conjugal and filial and maternal and fraternal feeling, the duty of the prince and leader, and the loyalty of follower and subject, the greatness of the great, and the truth and worth of the simple, toning things ethical to the beauty of a more psychical meaning by the glow of its ideal hues. The work of Valmiki has been an agent of almost incalculable power in the molding of the cultural mind of India. It has presented to it to be loved and imitated in figures like Rama and Sita, made so divinely and with such a revelation of reality as to become objects of enduring cult and worship, or like Hanuman, Lakshman, Bharat, the living human image of its ethical ideals. It has fashioned much of what is best and sweetest in the national character, and it has evoked and fixed in it those finer and exquisite yet firm soul tones, that more delicate humanity of temperament, which are a more valuable thing than the formal outsides of virtue and conduct. So now let me go over it slowly. The Ramayana embodied for the Indian imagination its highest and tenderest human ideals of character, made strength and courage and gentleness and purity and fidelity and self sacrifice familiar to it in the suavest and most harmonious forms. So, those who created the epic Ramayana, uh, in Ramayana had sort of was by and large composed, it seems, Sri Aurobindo says, by one poet. Unlike Mahabharata, to which many contributed. Uh, so the one who created the Ramayana, the original Ramayana, the story, and the one which we now normally identify with is Valmiki. But apparently the uh, composition, or at least the history and legend, pre-existed much that even that composition. So the Ramayana embodied for the so one who created it, he made this epic embody for the Indian imagination, uh, which means that it stretches your mind. Uh, it Imagination is something which stretches your mind, and yet it may seem as if such a thing can't exist. You know that it is just waiting to be realized. That is what imagination is basically about. So it has that element of uh, being somewhat unrealistic in some ways, but at the same time, one could see that it was within the realm of possibility. That is what imagination is about. So, for the Indian imagination, Ramayana embodied the highest and tenderest human ideals. So, they were highest, but same time not severe. They were tender, which means gentle in their touch. Highest and tenderest human ideals of character. And what did the Ramayana do? Besides that, it made strength and courage and gentleness and purity and fidelity and self sacrifice familiar to it. To it, that is the Indian imagination. So the Ramayana made strength and courage necessary because the Ramayana as well as Mahabharata were essentially about the conflict between good and evil. The Puranas also have plenty of that. We know the conflict between the Devas and the Asuras and the Samudra Manthan and all that. But then all that is happening, the Puranic tales, all that is happening in the celestial world, the gods and goddesses. But here, Ramayana and Mahabharata brought the same conflict to this earth, to this world, which makes it more easy to relate to. So even God was himself here in the human form and was behaving like a human being. So we could easily relate to these stories, but basically it was the conflict between good and evil, and therefore good had to have that strength and courage to be able to stand up for itself and fight if necessary. So made strength and courage, and at the same time gentleness. And then all this was within the framework of purity and fidelity. Not that you can use just about any means, to win just because you feel that I'm fighting for what is good, what is just, and I'm trying to defend good and just from evil and injustice. So it's not that any means were acceptable, certainly not terrorism for a cause. It was based on strength and courage, and at the same time, gentleness, not losing the gentle touch, and within the framework of purity and fidelity. And self sacrifice, which means placing a cause above oneself, going beyond one's own personal self interest for the sake of a cause. So the the Ramayana made strength and courage and gentleness and purity and fidelity and self sacrifice familiar to it, familiar to the Indian mind, to the Indian imagination. And how did it do it? In the suavest, that is, again, in a gentle and elegant manner, in the suavest and most harmonious forms, colored so as to attract the emotion and the aesthetic sense. So it was not lacking in the emotional and the aesthetic sense, uh, because emotions are, in a way, the most powerful element that we have. Much though we may like to be guided by the intellect, by the faculty of reasoning, by and large, we are ruled by our emotions. And therefore, anything which appeals to emotions is more likely to sink in and actually mold our character, mold even our way of thinking, because the way we think is also uh, colored so often by the emotions. So there's plenty of emotion. The emotion that went with Dashrath not having a child and wanting a child, and then after getting the children, getting attached to the children, and then going through all the trauma when Ram had to leave for the forest. So there's plenty of emotion in it, and the aesthetic sense. So, as any good piece of literature should have, that aesthetic sense is also uh, plenty. And in fact, Sri Aurobindo says that even as literary works, the work that we created, whether it was the Dharma Shastras or whether it was the epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata, was the best and the highest that the world has seen in ancient times as well as in modern times. Because when it comes to the quality of the uh, intellectual products, that has not really changed. The form might change, but if you go to the intrinsic quality of it, the uh, aesthetic sense that goes with it, the elegant expression that goes with it, that has always depended upon how open the creator has been to that higher influence from where everything flows and for which we are just a channel to put it down, to pen it down. So that is what has determined the quality, not whether it was created long back or now. So uh, whether it was in ancient times or now, and in recent times, we have Sri Aurobindo here, giving us yet another example of how you can combine all these elements in a piece of literature. So, so all this, the ideals and the strength and courage, gentleness, purity, fidelity, self-sacrifice, they were all woven into a piece of literature which was appealing to the emotions and at the same time had the highest quality of the aesthetic sense. And the result was that although there was plenty of moralizing indirectly through the story without actually sermonizing, it's the characters which were inspiring the morals, it was stripped of all repellent austerity. Because morals, when given, without any such coloring, can repel, particularly young people, particularly teenagers who need them the most. They are the ones who get repelled by all these morals. And why? Because they feel that all these morals are coming from these adults who want to snatch away all our happiness. That is the way a teenager might look at morals. And therefore, they can repel the persons, repel that age group which actually needs them the most. So But here in these stories, you find that the morals have been stripped of all repellent austerity. You just imbibe them as a part of the story. Nobody is sermonizing. And therefore, they have been stripped of all repellent austerity on one side, or on the other of mere commonness. So that common element is also not there. Just a parent or the teacher telling the child, do this, don't do that. So that, well, I've heard it so many times, you know. So it acquires a certain sort of commonness, and that itself takes away the attention because you don't pay attention to something which is being repeated all the time. Here you have neither that commonness, which may make it uh, not worthy of attention, which may sort of make you feel that it's not worthy of attention, and same time does not have the repellent element which may be there in the morals otherwise. This is what was not there, but then what is it that was there? Lent a certain high divineness to the ordinary things of life. So the life was apparently ordinary, but at the same time, there was this element of high divineness. So spirituality was brought into every aspect of worldly life. It was a life affirming brand of spirituality that was being promoted without sermonizing through these epics. So, what were some other elements which belong to ordinary life which were touched by these epics? Conjugal and filial and maternal and fraternal feeling. So, all these emotions uh, were accepted, and at the same time, a high divineness was imparted to them. All these feelings, conjugal feeling, filial family feeling, conjugal feeling between husband and wife, filial feeling, the family feeling, maternal feeling, the love of Kaushalya for Rama, uh, or of Sita for love and Kush. So all these things are there. So the maternal feelings and fraternal feelings, sense of brotherhood between Rama and his brothers, between love and Kush. So conjugal and filial and maternal and fraternal feeling. The duty of the prince and leader and the loyalty of follower and subject. So uh, what is it that becomes the person's swadharma in a particular situation? When the person is a son, he has one set of obligations. When he is a prince, another set. When he is the leader or the king, then another set of duties. So, how is it that this swadharma changes? The person remaining the same, depending upon the situation in which he is placed, depending upon the position in which he is. So, what would be the duty of the person when he is placed in the position of a prince or the leader or a follower or a subject? The greatness of the great and the truth and worth of the simple. So the greatness, they were great, and we could see their greatness clearly. And at the same time, the ordinary person, the inconspicuous, invisible person, was not neglected. He also can come up with profound truths. He can come up with intense devotion, like Shabari, and the worth of the simple, that even the simple person does not have to be neglected. The simple person also has to be given due importance, particularly if the relationship is that simple person is a subject of a king. Then, for the king, even that simple person's opinion becomes important. Like, I mean, if a washerman says, a dhobi says that I'm not like Rama to keep you because you have been with another man. As a king, Raman knew that he should not do it. Sita had already gone through the Agni Pariksha, but still he gave due importance he, uh, to the simple person making a simple, uh, impulsive comment. Even that was considered worthy of it. So you find the greatness of the great as well as the truth and the worth of the simple. Toning things ethical to the beauty of a more psychical meaning by the glow of its ideal hues. So everything that you can practically think of in the worldly life and in the life of a person who's placed in this special position of a prince or a leader or uh, a follower or a subject or a devotee. Uh, in all these situations, whatever one might face, that has been given a tone, an ethical tone, and a psychical meaning. That is something which is not rooted in conforming to certain a set of rituals or a set of uh, morality which is expected to be applicable to everyone all the time, but it is working more at the psychic level. Because the same rules which Rama applied to himself when he sent Sita away to the forest would not apply to the ordinary person. And what is it that when ultimately tells the ordinary person what to do and what not to do, and the king what to do in that situation, is not a fixed set of rules, but that inner guide in the psychic being. So instead of a fixed ethical code, you find that the sense of right and wrong has been given the uh, touch of the psychic meaning, and it is the psychic that that imparts this glow, in this glow to the ideals that have been placed in these books. So the ideals are there, but at the same time, in the uh, ultimate determinant of what is right and wrong is not a fixed ethical code, but the guidance provided by the inner guide, the psychic being. The work of Valmiki has been an agent of almost incalculable power in the molding of the cultural mind of India. And this is quite obvious uh, from when we look around. It has been presented to it to be loved and imitated in figures like Rama and Sita. So, for different types of roles, for different situations, we have these ideals, and we can see their behavior under different circumstances, because and they have gone through that whole range of circumstances which possibly a human being can go through in life. uh, Rama as a son who readily went to the forest with Vishwamitra, uh, and Rama as the son when he agreed to become the king when his father told him. At same time, uh, one day he was prepared to be the king, and the next day he was willing to go to the forest if the circumstances needed that. And then, his encounters with all the demons, and uh, his encounters with devotees like Shabari and so on. I mean, the whole range of circumstances which a person can possibly go through. How would an ideal person behave in that situation as an individual and as a person who has a certain position? And Sita, again, the ideal that has been in front of the Indian women. Often, I mean, they have been uh, inspired by the Sita's ideals, and that has given a certain character to the Indian womanhood. Although, I mean, there are people who will find certain things which do not go well with them. But then, in we have to see that firstly, we cannot really judge things which are at a much higher level than the intellect, using the intellect. And secondly, there's also the concept of Yuga Dharma, which means that that is another thing which again emerges from all the Indian tradition that we have, where we have flexibility not only in terms of who has to do what, which means the same uniform principles of ethics don't apply to everyone, but some of the ethical ideals could in fact change also with time. So the concept of Yoga Dharma is also built into our Dharma Shastras. So that is the beauty of and flexibility of the Indian culture, and that is what has given it a great survival value. And that's how it has survived the all the onslaughts of history, and still continues. The core continues to be intact. So, loved and imitated in figures like Rama and Sita, made so divinely and with such a revelation of reality as to become objects of enduring cult and worship. So, uh, although I mean they are in human form, uh, they have been seen as the incarnations of the divine. And that's how they have not only been held up as ideals, but also become objects of worship. Or like Hanuman, the epitome of devotion. And uh, what could be a better devotee than Hanuman? Manojda used to emphasize quite a bit in some of his tales, and uh, I can't resist talking about a few things that I can recollect from what Manojda used to say about Hanuman. One, that why had Hanuman, in the form of a monkey, been inserted into this epic? Hanuman's devotion was total. And this was to make the point that if the devotion is total, the imperfections of the devotee do not matter. Even a monkey can attain God. So that was the point made when Hanuman was given the form of a monkey. Secondly, once Manoda used to say that there was a competition going on among the monkeys. They were all trying to jump and to determine who can jump the longest. Hmm? So Hanuman was just sitting close by and getting amused by the competition, uh, just as a spectator. So somebody told him that why don't you also participate? You'll beat all of them. You will jump much more than any of them can. So what was the reply Hanuman gave? That is what is interesting. Hanuman said, I don't want to spend even an ounce of my energy which is not devoted to the service of Ram. That is the answer that Hanuman gave. I don't want to spend even the least bit of my energy on anything which is not devoted to the service of Ram. That's why I'm not participating. So that's a perfect devotee. Then Lakshman, again an ideal brother who went to the forest so that he could protect Ram and Sita. And Bharat, another ideal brother who was unwilling to sit on the throne, and he just did his duty because he was placed in the situation where he had to act as the king. He did his duty well, but then in the name of Ram, keeping Ram's footwear on the throne rather than occupying the throne. Ideal brother, the living human image of its ethical ideals. So here he was a living sort of demonstration of what actually the ideals that have been brought out in the epics. So you had living examples illustrating them, and therefore no sermonizing was necessary. All built into a marvelous storyline, and that's what has made these epics so effective as the fashioners, the architects of the Indian mind. It has fashioned much of what is best and sweetest in the national character, it referring to the Ramayana. So that is what has fashioned much of what is best and sweetest in the national character, and it has evoked and fixed in it those finer and exquisite yet firm soul tones and that more delicate humanity of temperament, which are a more valuable thing than the formal outsides of virtue and conduct. A rather long clause, but we'll go over it uh, slowly. It has fashioned, the Ramayana has fashioned much of what is best and sweetest in the national character. So, what we can admire the most in our national character, one can trace it to the Ramayana. And it has evoked and fixed in it, that is the national character, those finer and exquisite yet firm soul tones. No, here you can see those finer and more exquisite. Finer than what? That comes a little later. Those finer and exquisite yet firm soul tones, that is something which comes from our very divine essence. So that is the type of color which the national character has acquired, which is finer than what that is we'll come to, and that more delicate humanity and temperament. So once again, a comparative sort of a comparative expression, more delicate than what? More delicate humanity of temperament, which are a more valuable thing. What is more valuable? These things. The sweetest in national character, uh, the soul tones, delicate humanity of temperament, which are more valuable thing than the formal outsides of virtue and conduct. So the formal outsides of virtue and conduct, which goes by the name of good manners, good conduct, or ethical behavior, all of them may have a value, but then that is more outside than inside. What has been inculcated here, what is inside and gets reflected in what is outside. So the approach throughout is inside out. And that's why Sri Aurobindo says that here, that what has been done to the national character, what has been imparted to the national character by this epic is those finer and exquisite, yet firm. Firm in the sense that they are unshakable in a way. Because on one hand, what comes from the soul responds to circumstances and can vary the verdict depending upon the circumstances. It not only provides situation specific guidance, but also individual specific guidance. And the individual specific guidance, again, depending upon the situation in which the person happens to be. So there is that much flexibility, and yet it is firm in that particular situation for that particular individual. There is a clarity which gives it a certain firmness. There is no vacillation there. So that is what the beauty of the soul tone is. And along with that, so that's how this character, which is based on the soul tones, is better than the formal outsides of virtue and conduct. And in the same way, that delicate humanity of temperament, in which you don't have that severe austerity which goes with a fixed ethical code. So instead of that, you find a delicate humanity of temperament, which has the capacity to see why somebody behaved in a particular way in a particular situation, and also that, well, may not be perfect, but then who is perfect? We can always move towards perfection from where we are. So it is that sort of a temperament, which is the basic thing sort of in yoga also, as we know, that we don't go on a permanent guilt trip. We instead go within, reflect, go through that inner churning process, and the inner change that we achieve through this, through that we expect that in a similar situation in future, the same mistake would not be committed. So that inner change is brought about through this reflection and inner churning, and that then gets reflected in outer life. So that gives a certain delicate humanity of temperament, which are a more valuable thing. All this is more valuable. The soul tones and this delicate humanity of temperament, which is more valuable than the formal outsides of virtue and conduct, than certain expectations which are just based on the norms prevalent in the society, and you are expected to conform to them on the outside. So, and this is from the Renaissance in India, and the other is essays on Indian culture, which forms volume 20 of the complete works of Sri Aurobindo, on pages 350 through 351. All the works of Sri Aurobindo, all the volumes, all the 36 volumes, are available for free download on the website of Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Pondicherry. So you just type sriaurobindoashram.org and CWSA. It will take you straight to those 36 volumes, any of which can be downloaded. And you have to do nothing. You just have to click on the volume and the volume gets downloaded. It's made so user-friendly. But as you see, I mean, Sri Aurobindo's writing can be a little challenging when it comes to understanding, and therefore, if you find it difficult, you have plenty of company. Because you can see in this passage that I have read, there are just two sentences. Starting from here right up to the end of this page in this presentation is just one sentence, and from here till the end here is one more sentence. So all I have done is just read out two sentences from Sri Aurobindo. So if you find it challenging, you have plenty of company. But then if you have to get something really of the highest quality, you have to be ready for spending a little time and give time to digest it. Uh, but then to make it a little simpler, recently there has been published another volume by the National Book Trust India. Uh, the title is The Diary Divine. It's called the diary because it has 366 standalone passages. Each of them is just one page. So in the Diary Divine, this constitutes just one page, page 243 of this. So there are 366 pages, uh, giving 366 passages, and it has been called the diary because if you read one page a day, then you would still complete the book in 1 year and would get an idea of the range of Sri Aurobindo's works. There's hardly any subject under the sun that he has not touched, be it religion, be it spirituality or yoga or history or psychology or sociology or science, everything is there. And just about all these things, one page at a time, you find among these 366 pages. So that makes it a little simpler because one may get intimidated by, say, the Life Divine, which has about 1,000 pages. But if you have just one page to read and digest from the Life Divine, which has been picked up in such a way that that itself becomes a standalone page, then it may be easier to grasp and appreciate.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for this beautiful, insightful session. Very relevant and significant for the occasion of Vijay Dashmi today. Thanks a lot, sir. Let's check with the participants if anyone has a question or anyone wants to share something. Participants, please go ahead. You can use the chat box. I'll read out the messages or you can unmute and speak up.
Thank you, sir. It was very insightful, and the way you shared it made it very simple and full of stories. So, then in that ways, it stays etched in the mind, especially the Hanuman part or anywhere. So, uh, the way you have used the stories and examples of how it relates to the present life, how we can see a reflection of the writings or the epic in the life that we are living right now. So, thank you, sir. Really enjoyed the talk.
Thank you, Ruchi.
Thank you, Ramesh bhai. Thank you so much for a beautiful session. It felt really like a satsang on this special day of Vijay Dashmi. And I kind of grew up with a lot of Ramcharitmanas reading in my childhood. And later I read Valmiki's Ramayana. And of course, how you mention it so beautifully, Sri Aurobindo, the way Sri Aurobindo has taken the essence of it and brought it out, and through your selection, the passage that you selected was very powerful. You can read it, revisit it so many times, and every time you find something new. Today, what I found really inspiring, and maybe it was also because of the way you were explaining it, was that passage about the ethical and aesthetic part, the combination of the two, the way the two integrate. So, not the austerity of the ethics, which would make it repellent, but to add the psychic glow, the psychic beauty to it, which would make it more attractive. So that part really stayed with me today. So thank you for highlighting that. It was very beautiful. That's the poetry also of Valmiki, and poetry of the way Sri Aurobindo explained that, in his prose. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Coming from you, it means a lot, because you have been into Sri Aurobindo's works for so long, and so well read yourself. Means
But
a lot.
but we are all following on the path that you have shown, Ramesh Bhai, and there are so many here. So thank you for. I mean, I saw the title and I thought I have to really join, though it's sometimes difficult to join. But today's topic was very, very dear. It's very dear to my heart. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bijlani, for that lovely talk. As was just mentioned, it was actually the title of the talk, which was, made me, compelled me to join in today. And for me, the takeaway was the most simple, but I found that the most beautiful, which was the explanation of the character of Hanuman. That was really a beautiful interpretation of the relevance of Hanuman in Ramayana. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Sir Marcelo has a question. I'll read it out. Many thanks for the session. Since today is celebrated as Vijay Dashmi, what does it mean in the context of integral yoga, the victory of the good against evil? What does it mean practically in our inner context? And the second question is how this victory happens.
Thank you, Marcelo, for asking these questions, because so far there have been no questions. It was basically comments and appreciation, which I must confess I did enjoy. But these are the two questions. Now, how does it fit into the idea of integral yoga? The way it fits in is, the strength and the courage, which is required for standing up for what is good, what you think is right. And that is something which is an integral part of integral yoga also, because we are guided by the psychic, and in integral yoga, we lay emphasis on letting the voice of this inner guide, the psychic being, prevail. Now, that very often needs a lot of courage and strength, because uh, you may be making an unpopular choice, you may lose something, uh, you may take a risk about something, and therefore it needs strength and courage. And if one really decides to let this voice prevail, then that strength also comes, because the psychic beings are our divine essence, are the representative of the divine in us, as the mother has said. And the divine is not only all knowing, it's also all powerful. And therefore, because of this total knowledge, it gives us the right choice. But then, because it is also all powerful, if we decide to let this voice prevail, it also gives us the courage to act upon it. So, that is what you can say, that's the parallel between the strength and courage that has been shown in the epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata, which one needs to stand up. That is the type of strength which Arjun seems to be losing in the Gita, and then Sri Krishna reinforces it. No, this is a battle which you must pick up, because it is a battle of justice against injustice, good against evil. So don't hesitate to fight. So that is the type of strength and courage which Rama has also shown in the Ramayana. So that strength and courage goes very well with letting that inner voice prevail, which needs strength and courage most of the time. And secondly, how does victory actually happen? That's an interesting question. Does the victory of good over evil happen because there was a great warrior like Rama or Krishna? Or does it happen because this was just sort of demonstrate to us how we should behave in a particular situation? Because, as Sri Krishna says in the Gita, tells Arjun that for all practical purposes, the Kauravas are already dead. Mai vaita nihita purvameva. So, for all practical purposes, they are dead. But then you are dear to me, so you be the channel for doing it. Nimitta matra bhava savyasachin. So, you be the nimitta, you be the channel. So, whether in this case also, uh, the fact that the Sita was taken away by Ravan, uh, that could have easily been prevented. Uh, that was not prevented. Then, Rama could have done it without any aid from the Vanar Sena, but he enlisted that. And why all that was done was to show to us how we can do it in the ordinary world, how good can fight evil in the ordinary world. So these were sort of examples set for us. So the victory probably is because the plot has already been planned by the master uh, creator. He has already sort of the whole plot in mind, and then it just has to be enacted here. And for enacting a part of it, he comes down in human form as Rama or Krishna. And as Sri Aurobindo says, in the essays on the Gita, that one might say that if that was the only purpose of the avatar, that is the divine itself descending in human form, even if it is to wipe out evil or so on, that could have been done by sending a very powerful warrior, a Vibhuti, who is very powerful to the world. So, in fact, the higher purpose of the avatar it goes even beyond vanquishing Ravan or any such evil entity. The higher purpose is to guide humanity towards the next level of evolution. That is what the deeper, higher purpose of the avatar is. So when you say that how does victory happen? On the surface, it happens because Rama was very powerful, he was courageous, he had the strength, and with the help of the Vanar Sena, he did it, and therefore there was victory. And it was the power of good behind him, and so good always triumphs over evil, so it demonstrates that. But at a deeper level, this victory happened because Rama had already decided, the divine had already decided on the plot as well as this outcome.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. Okay, so before closing the session today, I'd like to inform the participants that the recording of today's session and all Yes Talks are published on our YouTube channel, Yes Spirituality. This is how it is spelled. You can visit the channel for extensive content on yoga, education, spirituality, and related subjects as well, like self-help, psychology, and wellness. We are present on the social media platforms also, Instagram and Facebook. Please do visit us there. So, Marcelo, thanks for the answers, sir. And thank you once again for sparing your valuable time for all of us and sharing your deep wisdom with all of us. Thank you so much, sir. Participants, thanks for being with us today. We'll close today's session now with a moment of peaceful silence. Namaste.